please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Well, let's get straight to the top story this evening. Mumbai residents today woke up to a sight never seen before. Over 10,000 farmers from different districts of Maharashtra flocked the streets of the city, the final destination of their 180-kilometer-long march. The men and women, mostly belonging to tribal areas of the state, started the mammoth rally from Nashik last Tuesday. The landmark movement is spearheaded by the All India Kisan Sabha, an affiliate of the CPM. Other political parties like Shiv Sena, MNS and the Congress have also extended their support to the protesters. Archana Shukla and Utkarsh Chaturvedi have been tracking this from 6 a.m. and they're joining in live from the Azad Maidan in South Mumbai, where the farmers have been gathered. Guys, let me come to Archana first. You have been there since morning. Quickly take us through what the key demands are and what has transpired in the last few hours, and what do we see ahead?
Well, yes, since morning the sun has been blazing hot. The mood here is as intense as the sun, with over 10,000 farmers protesting here for their rights. As we speak right now, a group of 12 farmer leaders from this group are meeting a group of ministers and the Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis to set out their charter of demands. They have 8 key demands on their list, the biggest of them being a complete loan waiver. Remember last year, Maharashtra government set out to waive loans for over 46 lakh farmers, but that was only 1.5 lakh rupees of loans to be waived off. Now the farmer groups are asking for a complete loan waiver without any conditions applied to that. The other also deal around Forest Rights Act, where a lot of tribal farmers who are part of this protest are saying that they need their land, the rights to their lands in place. They are also not willing to part ways with their land for projects like that of super highways or bullet trains. The most important one also being implementation of the Swaminathan Committee, where farmers are protesting to get remunerative prices for their crops, which means 1.5 times the cost of production should be the selling price. These are some of the key demands. They are also asking for compensation for crop losses during hailstorms and pensions for farmers. Well, that's a long list, but the farmers here, the protesting farmers here, are very, very strict and stiff that until all their demands are being met or a solid assurance from the government, they will not move out of Mumbai. They will not move out of this Azad Maidan. What is also interesting to note is the kind of support these groups have found, political as well as from around Mumbai and people. Utkarsh, I'll bring in my colleague Utkarsh Chaturvedi here. Utkarsh, we've seen a lot of political support also for this, farewell protest, which has been organized by All India Kisan Sabha. How do you view this from the political lens? Elections 2019 are approaching soon.
So the fact is that this whole movement is spearheaded by the All India Kisan Sangh, which is the farmer body of CPIM, the left party, but that is not shying away any political party to join with them. Now remember that no party really wants to be seen as an anti-farmer party at this point of time, and none in the opposition are really trying to make most of this opportunity at this point of time. And that is precisely the reason that the parties like Shiv Sena, who are an ally to the government, have also lended support to this event. In fact, a very good visual which came last night was Aditya Thackeray, the scion of the Saffron Brigade, really walking right in mid of the red flags and chants of Lal Salam. But that is not it. The BJP is also under a tremendous pressure. They really don't want any anti-farmer kind of attack to them. The BJP CM Devendra Fadnavis has been saying that we offer all the support, all the solidarity, and that is precisely the reason why Girish Mahajan, who is the BJP and a senior BJP leader, who is an MP and senior BJP leader, worked with the farmers in the morning. Talking about demands, almost 85 to 90% demands are such which BJP really wants, are okay with. It is only about the contention of those 10% which are the tricky ones, and we have to wait and watch of what happens to this important meeting which is going on at this point of time.
Well, right, like Utkarsh pointed out, no one wants to be seen as an anti-farmer right now in this very heated year of the election year, so to say, but all eyes are certainly at the assembly right now, where this group of farmer leaders is meeting the Chief Minister amidst chants of Lal Salam and amidst chants of farmer rights here at Azad Maidan.
Okay, Archana, Utkarsh, thanks for taking us through that. Of course, you've been there since morning. We will keep bringing Archana and Utkarsh in to give us live updates. But let's stick to this big story. We're joined by Ashok Gulati, renowned agriculture economist and professor at the Indian Council for Research on International Economic Relations. Shireen Bani is here to take us through that discussion. Shireen, over to you.
Well, thanks very much. Yes, we are now joined by Mr. Ashok Gulati. Mr. Gulati, thanks very much for joining us here on CNBC TV18. You're a veteran of the agri-economy, sir. You've been writing on this particular issue for many years now. You've also been writing very extensively over the last few months on what the Modi government needs to do to catch up with the agri-growth rates of the previous governments before making promises of doubling farm income, etc. In the context of what we've seen happen in Mumbai today, what do you believe, Mr. Gulati, has gone wrong?
Well, the case of Maharashtra is a special one because out of the 4 years of Fadnavis government, 3 years agriculture has registered a negative rate of growth. So you can imagine out of 4, if 3 years are bad in negative, it's a crisis boiling all over. And just a lip service here and there will not work. You know, a farmer can bear if 1 out of 4 years is bad year, then he can overcome that. It's the reverse in Maharashtra. And even within the country as a whole, out of 4 years of Modi government, 2 years were bad, 14, 15, 15, 16. They were drought years. Unfortunately, the recovery in 16, 17 and 17, 18, which normally should have happened, did not happen because the prices collapsed. So despite a good production, the farmer still lost in a number of pockets, and that has created a sort of emergency in the country, I would say, on the farmer front. Now, I have been writing and suggesting to the government and literally begging them to do something bold, but so far only a few little steps have been undertaken, and the implementation of those steps also remains very, very weak.
You're using some pretty strong words there, Mr. Gulati. You're calling this an agri-emergency, a farmer's emergency. You say that you've written to the government calling for bold steps. The Niti Aayog held a meeting just on Friday, sir, to rework the minimum support formula regime, but there is no decision that's been taken on that just yet. This was the big budget promise. Outside of the MSP, sir, what are the bold steps that you have suggested to the government that you believe the government should take?
You know, one big side, there are two sides of this coin. One is the supply side when there is a drought, and Maharashtra is actually prone to higher frequency of droughts because their irrigation coverage is only 19%. And within that 19%, the problem
Right, we seem to have lost that audio with you, sir. But let me come back to the issue of loan waivers, sir, because that is a key demand that we've seen from farmers, sir. Now, you don't believe that a loan waiver is the answer. You believe that that is a quick fix. But let me also then ask you about the other recommendations that have come in, for instance, from the Dalwai Committee's recommendations. You believe that the government will find it hard to implement those before the 2019 general elections. Why is that, sir? And also the promise of doubling farm income. Do you believe that that is more hype than reality?
You know, this doubling of farm income, and if Dalwai Committee is talking of real incomes doubling, 2 years have already passed. They said over 7 years. 2 years have gone. In the remaining 5 years, the growth rate that is needed is 13% per annum. 13% per annum you cannot have in the economy. What you're talking about agriculture. So to me, it's not hard. It's a pipe dream, nothing in that. So I think if the target is 2030, I can still think that it is a big achievement if they can double incomes of farmers by 2030. On a regular basis, which are sustainable through more productive routes rather than through doles. Today you can give the dole, but can you give it every year? Then where are the resources for investment? So I think raising aspirations and expectations, saying that we will double farmers' real incomes by 2022, will be actually a mill around their, it will be a stone around their neck as the elections approach. And the reality is the first 4 years of Modi government, even the second highly upgraded revised estimates of agriculture, the growth rate is only 2.4%. And what are we talking? To double farmers' incomes, you can have it, nowhere near that. You need 5 times more effort. So no way.
So you're calling doubling a farmer's income a pipe dream, Mr. Gulati. Let me also ask you about the agri-trade, sir. You say that agri-trade under the Modi government has shrunk when compared to the UPA government. Now, again, what has gone wrong there and what needs to be done?
You know, there are 2 factors. One is when the international prices started coming down. So your competitiveness and your exports are under tremendous pressure. So at that time, if you want to hold the fort, either you have to give some sort of a support to the export-led growth, maybe freight subsidy or maybe some other, back-end support. Otherwise, when there was upswing, global prices were going up, Indian exports were blooming and flourishing at that time. But I think after 13-14, prices started coming down gradually, and then if you look at by 16-17, prices are 25-30% below where they were in 13-14. And that blunts your competitiveness, 25% decline. And the only way was to check the flood of imports. You had to raise some duties. Now you have raised the duty on sugar, for example, to 100%. Pulses have gone up by 30, 40, 50% depending upon what pulses, and so on and so forth. So you could check a little bit of flood of imports, but we haven't done enough to promote exports as such, and that has caused a glut in the market, depressing domestic market prices. So your MSP for almost all the pulses and oilseeds were higher than the market prices. Then you are talking of price deficiency payments. Now the calculation of that for each farmer and the lower bureaucracy in APMC and so on and so forth, it's going to be a messy thing. And you may end up helping the trader more than the farmer. So I think what I would say at this stage, because I feel it as a crisis point, I feel it more or less as an emergency in agriculture. Direct income support, if you can give it for a year or 2, is one option, which is easier, transparent, and more equitable, and without bringing distortions in the commodity markets. Otherwise, if you go by this MSP, cost plus, or C2 plus, or A2AFL, prices are determined by demand and supply forces. And your support price can be a little below the equilibrium price. The moment you go higher than that, you will mess up the markets, and the efficiency losses will be greater than the support you are trying to give to the farmers. So better give them 5,000, 10,000 rupees per hectare basis, and look at the budget, what it can afford. And it will be a one-time payment or two-time payment, because when you do loan waiver, everybody doesn't benefit.
So what you're suggesting, Mr. Gulati, is that instead of focusing on revising the MSP formula, price deficiency mechanism, etc., you're saying that the government should look at direct income support to farmers at least for 1 year.
At least for 1 year. Best thing that we need is ensure that our markets are not strangulated, so that you put a ban on export of exports, where the farmer will go. Because onion prices went up, immediately you put the minimum export price or even raid the stocks. If you do not allow the private sector to hold stocks, and if there is a bumper crop, prices will crash. So you have to clean up the stocking limits question and say that for the next 10 years there is no stocking limit in this country, and people should come and invest in massive storage. You should promote processing, because the surpluses are absorbed, shelf life is increased through processing. You are giving peanuts in processing. Processing budget needs to go 5 times in this country. Those are the stabilizing factors. And protect your export lines. So when the prices are down, you should support that our exports should not suffer. They have come down from $42 billion in 13-14 to about $30 billion now. So there is a massive decline in exports. I think these are 3 or 4 things that you need to fix, and any support that you want to give, easier way, transparent way, more equitable way, without distortions, would be direct income support to the farmers.
Mr. Gulati, thanks very much for joining us there with what you believe is the need of the hour, the recommendations that you have given to the government that you believe the government ought to take forward. Thanks for joining us here on CNBC TV18. That's Ashok Gulati, one of India's foremost agri-economists, on the current emergency, the crisis which he feels is boiling over in Indian agriculture. We'll take a break, but when we return, we'll get you an update on the markets. It's a strong start for the Lal Street. More details when we get back.